Hello, thank you for joining Rupert Cooks again. Today we are continuing our series, French Bistro series, with the dessert that I think that most have probably had, chocolate mousse. Oh, good Lord, a Roman gazebo backdrop, cheap dialogue, cheap essential scenery. Normally when you serve chocolate mousse, you're serving it with cookies or something like that alongside, so you're not eating a big hunkin' bowl of chocolate. But today I've decided to have the mousse in a hazelnut tart crust. So we'll be making a chocolate mousse tart. We're going to start with skinning the hazelnuts and all of that sort of thing and making the dough, and you know how that goes. So if you want to make just the mousse, you can skip ahead to just that and serve it as it is. If you have cookies or something like that you want to make, it's just a basic chocolate mousse. But if you want to do the whole thing, we're going to be starting with the crust and filling it with the mousse and serving it up. So let's proceed. Okay, so to start off, we're going to need 1/3 cup of hazelnuts and a tablespoon of baking soda. And what I'm going to do is boil a cup of water, put in the baking soda, bring it to a rolling boil, put the hazelnuts in, and watch the water turn black and the skins fly off, and then we're going to scrub them a little bit and toast them. So let's get to that. Okay, so I've got my water up to a good boil. It's about 1.5 cups water with a tablespoon of baking soda. And go the macadamia nuts. And you can see that they kind of foam up a little bit there, so you definitely want to be using a big enough pot. Okay, so after boiling for about 5 minutes, you can see the water is quite brackish there. It turns black, which is a good sign because you're getting all the skins off. So I'm going to wash them, give them a little rinse, and just in a dish towel. You might want to use an older dish towel. This can stain it. Just going to sort of rub them up here. Oh, yeah. Get all those skins detached. And then these can go right there. We go. We just sort of get off the rest of the skins, and you want to get the skins off. You can't just use them as is because the skins are kind of bitter, but we're not doing anything too rocket sciencey here because we're going to have to toast these in an oven for a little bit, and then any further skin and nut sorting to be done will happen then. Ugh, the skins are really kind of a nuisance, but you can see how this does stain your towel a little. So I've toasted our hazelnuts at 350 degrees on a cookie sheet for about 10 or 15 minutes until they're dry. Got a nice toast on them. I've got them in a little mini grinder here, and we are going to grind these up into a fine powder. Then we are going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar and grind some more. And that's reasonably fine, kind of about like cornmeal. Put our sugar in there. Grind it up a little more. And that's just perfect. Really nicely ground up. And now we can start actually really making our pie crust dough. So I have 10 ounces of butter cut into little bitty pieces and 1 teaspoon of salt. I've already got my nut and sugar mixture in the mixer with the paddle attachment on. So 1 teaspoon of salt, 10 ounces of little pieces of butter, put it on, and we are going to cream this mixture until smooth. All right, so I've got 7.5 ounces of flour, all-purpose flour here, for about 1 3/4 cups, and some ice water. I'm going to add the flour gradually, alternating with a little bit of ice water here. I really don't want to add more than about 2 tablespoons of the ice water, though. I also should mention, when I was creaming the sugar nut mixture and the butter, I scraped the bowl down, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, like fairly quickly in between, because we're trying to keep this cold, but you're also trying to blend the butter in thoroughly. So those are 2 opposing things. So you got to scrape down fairly frequently here. So let's add the flour and the ice water gradually. All right, so I've got my dough out of the mixer. I am trying to form it into a little patty, trying to make sure that the edges are not frayed so that it rolls out nicely and all of that sort of thing. And I'm going to wrap it up in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator for at least an hour. You can do this ahead, it'll keep overnight in the refrigerator. Okay, so our dough has been chilling in the refrigerator for an hour. I have my 11-inch by 1-inch tart pan, and that's all buttered and floured. And I have my roller here set up with my 1/4-inch guides on each side. So we are making kind of a thicker than normal crust, a little bit thicker, because this crust is less of a flaky pie crust and more of a kind of a cookie crust, really. We will start rolling this out. And so we got 11 inches diameter, 1 inch on the side. So that is 13 inches is the size of the circle we will need. And this is exactly 13 inches between guides. So that'll be a little bit exciting getting that going. But I think it'll work out. Now, reasonably nicely as such things go. We've run our spatula and pastry cutter underneath it to loosen it a little bit. And we will try and get this up on the rolling pin. So I'm trying very carefully to push into the corner, but really being careful not to thin this down too much and trying to get it even all the way around. We are going to prick the bottom all the way around. Okay, so our crust is in the shell. We've pricked the bottom. We are now going to put it back in the refrigerator for 15 minutes and preheat our oven to 375. So our crust has been in the refrigerator for about 15 minutes, and we are going to line with parchment paper, dump in some of these nasty old pie weights. Been using the same jar of kidney beans for, God, 5 years? I don't know. But rolling out this crust, it smells amazing because of the nuts. It's just amazing. And I'm going to put this in our preheated 375 degree oven for 20 minutes. Check it, see if we've got a nice golden brown crust on the edges, and take out the parchment paper and the pie weights for, I don't know, maybe another 15-20 minutes to get the bottom all dry. So we'll pop it in and come back. Okay, so we've baked for 20 minutes. I rotated it halfway through. Okay, so our crust is now baked, but you're trying to get the whole thing baked, but you can't go too crazy. You can't go too crazy because it'll start shrinking on you too much. But you want it all baked because we're not going to do any further baking on this. This is going to be fill with the chocolate mousse and serve is basically what's going to happen. Well, fill, chill, and serve. So we've got this all set and all cooked through. The pie weights held up this edge really nicely without it shrinking down and falling in or anything like that. So we need to let this cool on a cooling rack and get to making the chocolate mousse. All right, so our crust is all done and it's cooling. And now we need to make the actual chocolate mousse. I have 4.5 ounces of reasonably finely chopped chocolate, 2 tablespoons of butter, and 2 tablespoons of espresso. I just use the cheesy instant stuff here. You can use 2 tablespoons of coffee or 2 tablespoons of water. It's really not that huge of a deal. And what we're going to do is set this over our double boiler and melt the chocolate. It's important to note that you probably want to use a reasonably good chocolate for this. You can decide where you want to be on that. I think you can get Nestle's chips for, I don't know, around $5 a pound maybe. You can get Ghirardelli bar chocolate for about $10 a pound. You can get Valrhona chocolate for about $32 a pound. If you want to go that route. But you'd have the pleasure of knowing that your chocolate came straight from Madagascar to your dinner table and enjoy it on that basis. So I'm going to set this over just below simmering water, not simmering water, and melt this all together. So let's get to that. Okay, so you can see how I've got my water here, and if you can see, there's just little bubbles on the bottom, but they're not coming up. So this is not really simmering. I'm going to put my bowl over here, and I'm using a metal bowl so I get some better heat conductivity rather than a big glass bowl. And now we are going to put in 2 tablespoons of espresso or whatever, 2 tablespoons of butter, and 4.5 ounces of chopped chocolate. And our bowl is definitely getting warm here. Okay, and so this is melted about where we want it. Everything's all combined in here. And we're going to take a little bit, and you want to try it on your lower lip to make sure it feels warm, because that's about where you're going to want it when we start mixing the rest of the ingredients in with this. So it's not quite there yet, even though it's melted, but I'm going to leave it on the double boiler to get it up there so that it's ready when we do our ingredients into it. Next, in our mixer, we are going to whip 1 cup of cold heavy cream until soft peaks form. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but that's soft peaks. So I'm going to put this into a bowl and put it in the refrigerator. Then I'm going to wash this out so that I can do some egg whites in a little bit, because grease and oils in the bowls aren't really conducive to egg whites getting fluffy. All right, so I separated 3 eggs, yolks and whites, and I've got a tablespoon of sugar. And I'm going to put the 3 egg whites into our mixer, and I'm going to go a little bit until they start to foam up and start to hold shape a little bit. Then I'm going to add my tablespoon of sugar and keep going until I have soft peaks forming again. Okay, so here's about where the eggs are. They're starting to foam up, and you can't really see it without the mixer running, but the horrible sound on the video doesn't really work too well. But you can start seeing it when the mixer whisk is going around and starting to leave, like, little ripples in it. That's them starting to form up. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add my tablespoon of sugar, and eventually we will get to soft peaks. Okay, so I've checked my chocolate temperature by putting a little bit on my lip, and it feels warm. I'm turning off my heater, my stove. You might have turned yours off before, but let's take our 3 egg yolks, get those in. Now we're going to go with about 1/3 of the whipped cream and half the egg whites. Make sure we got a good mix here. All right, now the last of the whipped cream and the last of our egg whites. And now we're going to fold in a little bit more gently. Because we are trying to maintain the air bubbles in our whipped cream and egg whites, while at the same time getting this all mixed together, which is obviously two opposing things. And there we go. Okay, so our mousse is all done. Shell is all done. Time to spoon this all into the tart pan. You can also put this in using a pastry bag if you feel that would give you a smoother top. Every time I'm dealing with chocolate mousse, I start thinking about Ruth Gordon and Rosemary's Baby. Because as I recall, they dose Mia Farrow with something or other. Is it like tannis root or something? I don't know. They dose her with chocolate mousse, and there's a scene where Mia Farrow is all drugged up, And Ruth Gordon says, I gave her enough in the chocolate mouse. So I always think of chocolate mouse. All right, so I'm going to smooth this out a little bit more. Okay, so I have a turntable that I actually got at a pottery store, and it works great for this, but if you don't have one, it's no big deal. So I'm gonna have to put a plate on it because it's so top is small, and it's gonna, these little tart pans are tricksters. It'll pop the bottom up unless I do that. So do that, and then this. Now you can see we get something nice and precarious. I'm just gonna take my scraper here. Sort of go along and, oh, almost had it there. Oh, darn it. There we go. Get it all leveled off. Now this is going to go in the refrigerator for 8 hours so that as Ruth Gordon would say, the chocolate mouse can set up. And after 8 hours, it should be quite a bit more firm. So this is just about it. We're going to do some final decorations and then call this puppy good. So our tart has been chilling in the refrigerator. I just put it in overnight, so it's now the next morning. And as you can see, it looks, I mean, it looks fine, but I think it's a little bit bland. So what I'm going to do is sprinkle a little bit of cocoa powder on it, and then some more chopped up macadamia nuts. So one nice way to do this is you can do this in either order. I'm going to do cocoa powder first, then the nuts. You can also do nuts first, then the cocoa powder. But if you do that, then the nuts are covered in the cocoa powder. And I don't think that looks quite as good. So I'm going to take my little sieve here, try and get a nice little even layer here of the cocoa powder. And that's pretty good. I'm going to go around the outside edge with the chopped up nuts, heavier at the outside and then thinner going inside, just purely because that's how I want it to look. So I'm just spinning it around to get some consistency here. You don't need to do with this on a turntable, but since I have it, I'll do it. And I'm just going around and around and around. And there we go. Our chocolate mousse tart, or chocolate mouse tart if you're serving these up in a Rosemary's Baby reenactment. Once again, thank you so much for watching Rupert Cooks. I really enjoyed this little project here, even though massively chocolate things are not quite my thing. But I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too.